Hey everyone, Amy here, presenter and producer of the Eerie Excursion podcast, the podcast that takes the left turn into the shadows to hear haunted and creepy tales from around the UK as told by locals, tour guides, and experts. So this week we were back in the north in the city of Lancaster. So here it is on the map, sitting at the heart of Lancashire, a county probably most famous for, well, in recent times, most famous for its cricket, if you like cricket and you're in the UK. But it's probably most famous for the War of the Roses, the ultimate battle between Lancashire and its bordering county, Yorkshire, for the throne of England, which Lancashire won. And then we had Henry VIII, but that's the story for another day. In this adventure, we talk all things witchy with my guide here, who was Peter. Now, Peter runs and owns an escape room in Lancaster. And one of the rooms his escape room is based on the Pendle Witches. And kind of from there, he started to design, him and his team designed a ghost walk around Lancaster. So the episode starts with a kind of true crime story of a doctor in the 1930s murdering his wife and their maid. It's incredibly good story. It's incredibly gory and a great story if you like your gore. In fact, a lot of stories in this episode are particularly gory. My favorite stories, however, were the ones, and the ones I want to mention today, were the ones from the Lancaster Castle. Now, the castle sits on top of a hill, and you get this incredible view of the Lancaster countryside. Now, when this video was taken, we were really losing light very quickly when we recorded, so I couldn't really show you as much of the surrounding areas as I wanted to, but I hope that quick clip gives you kind of an idea of the natural and honestly man-made, because the buildings are gorgeous too, but just the wonders that surround the castle. But this is kind of juxtaposed with a very dark history that takes place within the walls of the castle, and some of them just outside. So at the back of the castle by the abbey is a place called Hanging Corner. Now I want you to hear what Peter has to say about Hanging Corner.
As we can see before us, with the sort of double doors that we can see that are about sort of 6-7 foot from the floor, this is Hanging Corner. Okay, and the reason why it's called that is because Lancaster was known as the Hanging Town. It didn't become a city until 1937, and outside of London, as I just said, it hung more people than anywhere else in the country. So it really had a fascination with making people not leave alive. Okay. So we're gonna take a little sneak peek as to what that would have been like, okay? Because it was a bit of a grisly tale anyway. So prior to the 1800s, people would have been taken out to Ashton Moor, and if you've not visited Lancaster, there's a huge building. It's actually what we think is the second biggest mausoleum in the world outside the Taj Mahal. It's called Ashton Memorial, and it stands up on the Ashton Moor. It was built by Lord Ashton, and he gave that building and its grounds to the people of Lancaster. So it's a fantastic place to go, and it's got lots of parts around it. But that was where the executions used to take place. Following that, for keeping it close to the castle, A, for security purposes, and B, to put on more of a spectacle, they held it here. So if you would imagine scaffolding built up for the gallows, up to maybe about sort of 7-8 foot in height. Over here, as we look out, we can just see the wall then. Below that is the River Loon, and none of this would have been built up. So you would have had up to 4,000-5,000 people come to sit on the banks, including organised school trips, I add, for a day out to come and see a hanging. Okay, so never mind Britain's Got Talent, get them to a hanging. That's what we should bring back. So then you've got thousands of people, some emotional because it's people they know, mostly people very excited to see people executed. And then it starts to get a little bit quieter because the doors open. And just out through those doors there, the damned are brought out. Led one by one, ropes tying their hands behind them, and the hangman leading them to their place. Okay.
I love this idea of Lancaster being the hanging town. I probably should have called the episodes that, but I didn't, because the biggest story to come out of Lancaster and Lancaster Castle really is the Pendle Witches. Now, despite the fact that the Pendle Witches are probably one of the most documented witch trials in English history, not a lot of people actually know about them. So here's a very quick rundown. Two rival families, both of whom are essentially white witches. They grew and sold herbs and things like that. These two families live in a village called Pendle, which laid southeast of the city of Lancaster. A young girl in one of the family gets accused of witchcraft by a traveling peddler. And that kind of sets off this chain reaction of then each family calling the other witches. All in all, 12 people were arrested for being a witch. Now, that was probably the shortest version of that story you'll ever hear. So please, please, please listen to the full episode to get the full information and, most importantly, the full context, which Peter explains very well, of what was happening in England at the time, which was 1612. One part of that context is that the old way of torturing to see if somebody was a witch was disappeared. It was gone. And, when I say the old way, I mean sort of those racks and, bodies being pulled apart and body parts being pulled out and things like that. So instead of that, the Pendle witches were simply imprisoned. Now, I say simply imprisoned because to King James I, they would have been simply imprisoned. But in modern times, after you hear what Peter says they've gone through, I think we can class that as torture.
So they believed that witches used spells through their hands. So the way that they were contained within the castle is they were all fastened to a big stone sort of wheel, and the hands were fixed to their body, sort of a cross pinned, so they were unable to raise their hands up. And obviously, they were kept in these most foul, unsanitary conditions for days and days and days.
So they were literally just kept like that.
Kept like that, so that whenever anyone was around that they could use spells on, they were fed very, very little, given very little water. They were obviously beaten, spoken out of terms. And then when it came to the trials, having said all of these under interrogation, then it was all brought up in trial. And unfortunately, the 9 out of the 10, and plus the 11 Elizabeth Southerns, were found guilty. There was one that was found not guilty, but the others were all taken out and executed over in Ashton Moor. And the reason why we know about this is one man who was involved in the trial, a local magistrate who was just a junior clerk at the time, was told to write down every little bit of information that happened. So actually the detailing of this case is relatively thorough, but there's no other writing you'll find. So whatever was written in that court case is what we know occurred. So what we do know is obviously 9 died at the gallows, 1 died, and Elizabeth Southerns, who was the matriarch of the Southerns family, has said to have put a curse on the men of Lancaster, or any man born within Lancaster city, that they will always die within the city. So if ever they leave, bad luck will befall them and they will return home. And that curse is still said to be prevalent to this day.
I mean, of course, there's a witch's curse after all of that. Peter actually did say to me that he has some male friends and he knows men who were born in Lancaster, tried to live away, and have ended up coming back. So maybe there's truth to it. Who knows? So as I always say, these episodes really are just snippets of the fuller podcast. So to hear the full stories of the witches, the Hanging Corner, and the Doctor Murderer, you can find that all on the YouTube channel. Now, next week is the last week of adventures in season 2. So make sure you subscribe below so you don't miss it.